Charlie Kirk is getting worse and worse by the day. He's come a long, long way from when he used to stand on college campuses and debate people about Thanksgiving being a celebration of genocide. I actually used to enjoy watching him, although I didn't agree with a lot of things he said. I found him highly entertaining. But he's getting worse and worse. And he has fully drank the Trump Kool-Aid, just like a lot of other conservatives have. And he has spent the last few months making election war room episode 1075 or however many episodes he has about how Trump can still win the election despite the fact that Trump cannot win the election, will not win the election, did not win the election, and will not be the president in 2021. Despite this fact, Charlie Kirk continues to hold on to the idea that maybe just somehow, some way, Donald Trump will be the president. And today, he made yesterday at this time, the time of this, you'll be seeing this, he made one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard about why Donald Trump can still be the president. Let's see it. Roll the clip.
Election of 1960, it was John F. Kennedy versus Richard Nixon. A very famous election for a variety of different reasons. It is most commonly taught in government class and civics class as being the election that was more on television than on radio, especially during the debate of Nixon versus Kennedy. It was the young Catholic Kennedy versus the establishment Richard Nixon, who was actually vice president at the time. It's a very important point. And so the election was very tight in a lot of different states, in particular in New Jersey and in Illinois, but also in Hawaii, the new state of Hawaii at the time. Original election results showed that Richard Nixon, then vice president, had won the state of Hawaii. The governor's signature and the governor of Hawaii actually certified the election results for Richard Nixon, not for JFK. JFK challenged the election results and went to a recount. Nixon was up 141 votes, but after a recount, JFK pulled ahead. Now, this actually happened after the results were sent to Washington. So Nixon was the president of the Senate in 1960. He was the vice president. He was Dwight D. Eisenhower's number 2 guy. So what did Nixon do? Nixon, being a gentleman, Nixon trying to rise above political infighting, while the election was being stolen from him in Chicago and New Jersey by the Mayor Daley machine, specifically in Illinois, Nixon, in defiance to federal law, ordered that the Democrat candidate's certificate gets counted because they also seated Democrat electors, and ignore the accompanying Republican certificate. Now, what's the significance of this? A couple things. Number one, while Republicans were playing nice, Democrats were licking their chops for power, and they did get power. But number two, it actually shows the president of the Senate can do whatever he wants. There's really no check and balance against Mike Pence on January 6th. Do I like that? No. Is it the framing of how it is? Yes. Thomas Jefferson in the election of 1800, with highly contested election results in Georgia, when he was running up against John Jay and others, guess what Thomas Jefferson was at the time? You guessed it, vice president. He was the president of the Senate, overseeing this process. And the Virginia law records show that Georgia was a hotly contested election. It's kind of funny how this all comes full circle, right? And Thomas Jefferson decided to put Georgia in his category despite the controversy. Thomas Jefferson ended up becoming our third president, executing the Louisiana Purchase, and, amongst other things, designing our Declaration prior to that, becoming known as one of America's greatest presidents. Same in 1876. So, Pence has what is called a plenary power, which is a fancy legal way to say absolute. Nixon basically saw the results from Hawaii and said, I don't like them. I'm giving them to Kennedy. It actually hurt him. He wanted to do the gentleman thing, the honorable thing. Whether or not he was correct in that is up for Nixon historians to come on this program maybe at a different time and debate. However, there was no check and balance against that. And so there's precedent, there's constitutional authority. Mike Pence's power on January 6th will be plenary and unappealable. As president of the Senate, every objection comes directly to him. And he can rule any objection as out of order, accepted, denied, you get more debate. He's kind of king of the Senate.
Okay. First and foremost, the Nixon example was a horrible example. Because in the Nixon example, Nixon did turn over the vote, yes. But it was because Kennedy won the recount. He won the recount. Now, technically speaking, he is right about it being illegal because the results were certified before the recount. So, technically speaking, the state of Hawaii probably should have went to Nixon. However, even without the state of Hawaii, Kennedy was still getting the 270, man. Kennedy was going to be the president of the United States. Let me look up how many. Actually, can we pull up here how many votes Kennedy won by? Kennedy versus Nixon. Wait for it. I just started having this stuff ahead of time. Kennedy versus Nixon electoral votes. Okay, Google. Now, yes, John F. Kennedy won 303 electoral votes, and Richard Nixon only won 219. So, the state of Hawaii would not have been enough to get him over the top. Hawaii only had 3 electoral votes, okay? So, even if Richard Nixon had given Hawaii to himself, which technically speaking, legally he should have, but that's up for debate, with historians, like Charlie said. That's the one thing he got right. It would have just taken Kennedy down to 300 votes and Nixon up to 222. So, he still would have lost the election by a landslide. Matter of fact, he would have lost by even more than what Donald Trump lost by in this past election. Kind of funny, huh? So, anyway, that's that. So that example is out the window because you're talking about 3 electoral votes that essentially didn't matter. And technically what Nixon did, you can make an argument that it was illegal, but you can also say it's just an act of good faith or symbolic or virtue signaling, whatever title you want to put to it. It meant nothing because at the end of the day, Kennedy would have had 300 electoral votes, still would have won the election. Okay? Number 2. You talk about Thomas Jefferson and Georgia being hotly contested and he putting it in his own category. Yes, Georgia was hotly contested, but when they counted the votes, Jefferson was awarded the victory and the election result was certified for him. So it's not like they were saying, oh, someone else won that state. And he took the state and put it in his column anyway. No. He won that state. Now, it might have been debated or contested or whatever, and maybe the technology wasn't as good for vote counting back then. The fact of the matter is, Thomas Jefferson won the state and he put it in his column. Okay? That's number 2. Number 3, when you look at this election, right? It's not just one state Mike Pence needs in the Trump column. It's several states. In case you've been living under a rock, Biden got 306 electoral votes. 306 electoral votes, okay? That is quite the deficit for Trump to overcome. Also, he won, just to add insult to injury for Republicans listening, he also got 8 million more votes in a popular vote. Okay? Now, secondly, Donald Trump only got 232 electoral votes, whereas Biden got 306. So it's not even close. You would have to overturn Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, and I believe Arizona as well to get him to that point. There is no way. Number 2. Number 3, the argument that Mike Pence can do what he wants because of some thing that Nixon did 40 years ago, I hate to tell you, man, that ain't it. That is not true at all. He cannot do whatever he wants. He is not the king of the Senate. He is the president of the Senate. He presides over it. He presides over the proceedings. But he cannot just break the law willy-nilly and give states to Trump. That's not how this process works. He can't do that. The way this country works is when the Electoral College certifies the results, they go to the person who they've been certified for. And outside of that one stupid Hawaii example that he used, you cannot find any examples where someone clearly won an election and they clearly got the electoral votes awarded to them and the president overturned it. You're just not going to find it. Nowhere. It's not true. It's not possible. It cannot happen. And no amount of mental gymnastics or bullshitting or revisionist history or speaking about things without context is going to change the fact that Joe Biden won the presidency and he will be elected in office. Now, beyond all this, even if Mike Pence did have the ability to just give the election to Trump, I think that would be called a coup. And I don't think that anyone who claims to love democracy and love this country, which Charlie claims, will be advocating for a coup. Because that is anti-American and is anti-democracy. So you're advocating for the will of the American people to be overthrown. And then he says, Pence has unchecked power. Do I like it? No, I don't. But he essentially has it. Yes, you do. Let's just admit it. First of all, he doesn't have it. But if he did, you would love it. You'd be so great. You'd be chanting, yay, dictatorship. 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 Yes. Dictatorship. That's what you'd be doing. Because that's essentially what you're doing now. Conservatives like Kirk need to come to grips and it's over. Election's over. Election's done. Try again in 2024. You're done. You had your moment. You had your 4 years. You're done. Over. Gone. Bye. Come back in 4 years. Go back to the drawing board. You lost. Trump lost. Make America Great Again is done. At least for the next 4 years. It's over. Goodbye. Done. Finished. Finito. How many more languages do I have to say it in? Oh my gosh. Because clearly this guy doesn't understand English. Look, man. These conservative pundits, they got to stop. They got to stop. The election is over, man. It's over.